This is Becoming Inclusive from the Kaleidoscope Group, where we're thinking differently about diversity, equity, and inclusion for more empowered people at work. We're committed to real change, and that begins with real conversations. Welcome in.
Hi, welcome to another edition of Becoming Inclusive. This is a process, and we understand it's a process. You don't just wake up in the morning and say, hey, I'm inclusive. Becoming inclusive means that we work at it every day, and there's so many dimensions that we try to look at and investigate as we move through this journey, through these discussions that we're having with you today. I'd like to welcome my co-host, Catherine Potts. Kat, welcome back. We got a great guest today as well.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be back.
Today we have Jodi Bondi Norgaard, and she is a facilitator, a speaker, and as well as a consultant, and she does a whole lot of other things. And today we're going to talk about equity in the women's space. And so, Jodi, firstly, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, look, we're excited. I get to talk to do a pre-conversation, and I get to talk to people beforehand. But in this case, I hadn't had the opportunity to do so. So that means that I get the opportunity to ask some questions, some pre-questions, so our audience can know a little bit more about you as well. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, please.
Oh, sure. And I have to say, it's my fault that you did not get to give me any pre-questions because I wasn't ready and I had to go get ready. So thank you. But a little bit about my background is probably 12 years ago, when my daughter was around 9 years old, I kind of had this I did have an aha moment in a toy store. Just to give you just a little bit of background, before that, I had started a business in my 20s and 30s. I sold the business when I had my third child, and then I was home with the kids. I always knew I would do something else, but I just wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. So if you're a parent out there, you're going to be very familiar with this scene. You're running into a toy store with your child by hand because she needs a wrap birthday gift for a party she's attending in 30 minutes, right? One of those panicky parent moments.
Right.
Yeah, right. I mean, and it's just like, oh my gosh, we need something. So my daughter Grace was 9 at the time, and she was with me. And she is, was dressed. I'm going to tell you how she was dressed because she looked like a normal kid on a Saturday afternoon. She had just gotten done playing soccer. So she had her, cleats on. She had her shin guards on, her shorts. She had crazy, messy pigtails, and her cheeks are all rosy from exertion. When we're running up and down the aisles, frantically looking for a product, a line of dolls just stopped me in my tracks. They had on short skirts, crop top, belly button rings, big hair, lots of makeup. I pick up one of the dolls, and the name on the hang tag is Lovely Lola. I actually have the doll. I keep it with me. Do you want to see it? Do you want me to pull it out? Just
you might as well. You
okay,
might.
I might as well. Hold on. One second. So I actually bought the doll. So this is the doll that kind of led me on my journey. So at that moment, I knew that there wasn't one parent out there that wanted their daughter to act or look or be called Lovely Lola. So I decided to do something about it. And I created a line of dolls called GoGo Sports Girls, encouraging girls to be healthy physically, mentally, and emotionally through sports and physical activity. So it took 2 years from rough draft to put the dolls out there. It did great with my first sale, which is at the U.S. Open. So the United States Tennis Association, all of them sold out in 6 days.
Wow.
And so, but once I got to the New York Toy Fair, and this would have been in February of 2009, I had so many buyers come to my booth and say, hey, you have a great product. I love it. My daughter plays soccer. She would love Soccer Girl. And then I'd say, how many would you like to buy? And then I'd get the hand. And buyers would say, hey, it'll never sell. It's a great product, but it'll never sell. And I said, well, why? And they said, because ultimately girls like fashion. Can you create a fashion doll? I'm like, that's my point. As a mother of a daughter and as a woman, I'm positive girls like more than fashion. So I started to realize and see the discrepancies in marketed to boys and the discrepancies in products marketed to girls. The products marketed to girls are associated with appearance and attractiveness. So it starts young. And the products marketed to boys were associated with violence and aggression. I have 2 boys as well. So I saw this discrepancy and I thought, this isn't right. We can't keep pigeonholing these kids because that limits them, and it limits them from rising to their full potential. So I hung in there for 5 years, for 5 long years with very few sales. And then after 5 years, I had an opportunity to pitch to 3 Walmart buyers. 5 minutes. They said, this is a winner. If you can write 6 books to go along with 6 of the dolls, package them together, we'll put them in Walmart stores. I did that. That got the ball rolling. I ended up working with the Obama administration, and then I sold the business. And then so this is what it kept going. So then I sold the business to a larger toy company. And then now I'm working with the Biden administration and their Gender Policy Council, working on different strategies to, I feel like in our world, and not just in the United States, but in our world, we work from the top down, right? So we're constantly saying, going into C-suites, why aren't there more women, right? And it's like, okay, people say we can't find women. Then we go down to colleges and then high schools. And then, it just starts early where we start pigeonholing these girls into thinking like, I have to concentrate on my looks, when we should be giving them options that stir their interests and their ambition. So we could see, more of this gender balance in our world. My view has always been, if we could see the world equally through the eyes of men and women, we would have greater balance. And balance is not in our world right now. So, hey, let's give it a shot.
Well, before Kat is chomping at the bit to ask 15 questions, but I'm going to jump in and ask this one first, is that, are the dolls still available? And are the books still available?
The books are still available. They're the company that bought the dolls or bought the intellectual property. They ended up 2 years later returning the intellectual property because they pulled all the product off the shelf. We redesigned everything. They got cold feet because they said, we worked on this, but bottom line, they said, a true girl empowerment product has never been done. There's not a true blueprint. We don't want to be the first. So, wow. Yeah, the books are still out there. I am looking for a publisher. I have it with a literary agent right now, but the books are definitely out there on Amazon.
And I know we were going somewhere else, but I just can't go anywhere else without staying here for a moment. Is that what just happened with U.S. soccer, women's soccer? It would seem to me that you have a proof point that women are. It's not just women's soccer; it's women's basketball. As the WNBA fights really, really hard to get equity and pay as well. So it seems to me that women are looking for equity in so many different areas and are interested in so many different areas than just looks and appearance.
And I want to jump in too on this because I want to rewind to something that you said, Jodi, around what I think the misconception where in the C-suite level or any leadership roles that thought of, we can't find women. Because to Reggie's point, there are tons of women out there that are looking for these opportunities, but this kind of mindset of, we just can't find them doesn't feel very genuine or authentic to me a little bit. So I'd like for us to expand on that also with what Reggie was saying.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so one thing that I'm going to go to Reggie's point. One thing, Reggie, that is great that the U.S. women's soccer did what they did, but my God, they had to work so hard. So part of me is like, I love that they did it. Don't get me wrong. I think that's great. But we always have to work so hard to fight for equality, which is exhausting. I mean, I have been doing this for over a decade. And sometimes I just want to put my head on my desk and just say, I'm so tired of fighting. I constantly have to fight. And by nature, my nature, I'm not a fighter. I don't like confrontation. I don't like to say, hey, I have another point of view. I like it, I like it to be, a smooth road. But I have to continue to fight for my daughter, for other girls, for women. So Kat, to your point, I was speaking at an event at a big university, and I was speaking to their entrepreneurial program. And this was a few years ago. And the head of the department said to me, "Oh, geez, I'm so glad we found you." And I said, "Really?" I'm like, well, "Okay, why?" And he said, "Because you're the first woman speaker we've ever had." I'm like, "Wait a minute. This in Giant University, I'm the first woman you've ever had?" And he said, "Yeah, we just can't find women." And it's like, you can find women. I'm like, I can help you with that. I said, there's so many women out there. You just have to start looking at, different avenues, right? It's just like that McKinsey study that shows that, Kaleidoscope Group refers to all the time, right? Leaders who see growth in productivity in everything when they have a diverse group, right? When they have a diverse team, whether, diversity, as we know, can be gender, age, race, disability, whatever, lots of diversity within the team. There are leaders that stop because it gets so tough, right? And they say, gosh, it's just too hard for me to move on. So I'm just going to continue what I'm doing and I'm not going to try any harder. And then they just plateau, right? But the leaders who just say, you know what, I know this is tough, but I am going to continue to work hard with my diverse team. Their productivity, everything goes sky high. But we all get to that X, right? It's a crossroad, right? Like it's too hard. I'm exhausted. I just can't fight anymore, right? Or I don't want to put any more effort into this. So you just plateau.
I want to push back though, Jodi, because it's insulting to me when people say it's too hard. Because it's not that hard. When over 50% of our population is women, when we look at the workplace and the contributions that women make in the workplace, that's huge. And then when we look at college, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think it's over 50 as well. So when you say you can't find them, they're right in front of you at every stage and every moment. So it's insulting to me for somebody to say that you can't find them.
Well, I wonder too if what's really being said is we can't find the attributes compared to the male potential employees that are in the pool. And that's interesting to me because then you get into this whole avenue of a male and a female on paper look the same, right? You meet them. What is it that's so different that you're saying you can find males with all these things in common, everybody in this huge pool, but you can't with women? Like, what are those unbalanced attributes? Like, that's what I feel like it's becoming just a little bit, it's more unfair than it is that they can't find. It's that measurement. It almost feels like it's harder for women because they're held to a standard different than male applicants.
I think you both are 100% right. And what I have seen is that, we're at a point where the conversation is happening, right? We're talking a good talk, right? Everybody says, yes, I'm on board. I want this. But when it comes to implementation, that's more difficult. Okay. And so I think that's where we are, and that we need to, offer, tools, help, suggestions, have more conversations on how do we do this? How do we implement it?
Right. And thinking too, what are some of those ways, right? Because that can be intimidating to your point. If you've done something the same way all the time, and even if your company has decided this is the type of person we typically like to hire, and you're only seeing that type come in male form, that's kind of restructuring your whole hiring process in some way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. I think it has to do with, the like me bias too, which we all have. We all have our biases. And as we discuss in our facilitation programs and with many corporations and organizations, it's bringing that unconscious bias to the surface to make it conscious. And that way we're able to, see what and how we can correct our unconscious bias, bringing the bias forward. Definitely.
So Jodi, this is my bias. My bias is that as it relates to women, I don't think it's as unconscious as we think it is. I think it is so conscious, so intentional because of the history that goes along with how women have been treated. And going back to your story about how women are perceived, is that women just want to look good. Women just are more concerned with their appearance and these light, touchy-feely stuff, as opposed to some other things from an empowerment perspective. So I might get kicked out of the club because I think it's less unconscious and more conscious than people might want to admit.
I actually agree with that's kind of where I was going too, and that's where I feel like it's like a whole restructuring, because I do think some of it's very conscious, and that's so hard to get through that barrier.
And my example is, so I came up with a model because that's just what I do. And we were talking in one of our episodes about P's. So I started playing with P's. And so there's pay that we're going to talk about as we talk about equity. There's perks. A lot of times when we talk about perks at the job, we'll see that men and women get different perks and men get more of those perks. There's performance, how your performance is looked at and graded, even though it might be better. You cited the McKinsey study about how the having women impacts performance overall in the company, but also profitability. And so then there's promotion. We know that there's these disparities when we talk about promotion, and then there's perception, just the overall perception about how we see women. And so for me, I want to start at pay. And starting at pay for me, Jodi, is this issue of how hard is this to fix? We did an episode with Brian talking about racism is easy to fix, I think was the title of it. This one, I want to just retitle this podcast, Equity in Pay is Easy to Fix. It just seems too easy. I know that you are working on this job and you're working on this job. You guys are working on the same job, doing the same work, but I'm paying you 66 cents to the dollar. Please talk to me. Help me, Jodi.
Well, I one thing when I think of the pay issue is if everybody should be mad about that, because if I'm not making the same as my male counterpart, that should make my husband incredibly angry, because this is our livelihood, this is our household, right? If I am as productive as everybody else, why would I be making less? And it affects us. So I mean, I think every male should be just angry about this, that it affects the livelihood of everybody, not just.
Why do you think it's so difficult to approach and to fix? Because I think it's an easy thing to fix. I mean, plenty of studies talk about the issue of doing pay audits and making sure that you have these equal pay scales and so on and so forth. But it seems so difficult to fix, because even in today's age, we're talking about 66 or 82%, 82 cents to the dollar generally, and then 66 for some people of color. So when we're doing that, it just seems I'm just confused as to why. And since you've been working in many of these administrations, why do you think the pay issue is difficult?
Well, I think, part of the issues, and I'm not an expert on this, but in my, opinion, from what I have done, I have seen it comes down to power, right? That it gives women power if you have, if you're financially independent and if you're, making a lot of money. It also it's always been done that way mentality. which I've seen a lot. It's always been done that way. So I have seen some diversity within, say boards, right? There are more women coming on boards, more people of color coming on boards. However, if you still look at the majority of boards, they're going to be majority of white men between the ages of, 40 and 70. So, it is changing. You look at our politics, right? We have a lot of women that are entering politics. However, I don't know the specific statistics, but I mean, it is, like 75% still men and 25%. While we're making good strides, we're still not equal.
Right. That, and I think it could also be a little bit intimidating, because once you start sort of auditing that, you could be uncovering some of those biases that may not be as unconscious, like Reggie was talking about. And then what do you do? Because then now you have this uproar, this reality of like, we've been kind of functioning this way that's been really detrimental to women. Mm-hmm. And we've been very obvious about it. I mean, it could kind of unveil deeper issues. And I feel like sometimes that could kind of hinder companies from wanting to put themselves in what could be a vulnerable situation. But it's just equally as vulnerable doing that, because oftentimes, at least the places I've worked, people do end up talking about their compensation with people that they work with, and people end up finding out anyways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I also think that women, when I was growing up, I was always encouraged to be that good girl. And I come by that with nature too. But I mean, I'm the oldest, and, I would, if my teacher said, please sit there and be quiet, I would sit there and be quiet. But I have learned that, to ask, right? It's hard to ask sometimes. And I think as women, we need to put ourselves out there and ask and, go for, a lot more, even more than we think. I mean, I still do this, and my husband's always, encouraging me. No, there was one time when I started on my speaking, I would get a lot of companies and associations asking me to do it for free. And I would, I need to get my, my resume built. Okay. And then the Chicago Marathon asked me to do it for free. And I'm like, I'm kind of exhausted doing all this for free. And my husband said, you know what? They're paying you for your talent and your knowledge and your service. He said, if our sink was broken, we wouldn't call a plumber and say, I know you're just getting started. Could you just come over and just fix it for free to get you some, experience? We would never do that. So, why was I telling myself, oh, it's okay, these big companies, I'll just do it for free? It's not okay. It's not okay.
Right. And it perpetuates, right? Because, they're thinking, oh, this is okay, we can get away with it. And then it's hurting people that comes after you or after, and that mindset, like you're talking about, statistically, women are less likely to ask for a raise, ask for more money than what's offered, offering for salary, stuff like that. Women just are. And it is perpetuated by not having examples of women that are out there saying, no, do not do that for free.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I was just doing a podcast a couple weeks ago, and, they asked me, one of the questions was, do you find yourself saying no more often now? Is it easier for you to say no? And I'm like, gosh, I like to say yes to a lot of things. But one thing that I like to say no to are my inner voices. And that's like what I say no to. Like, no, you cannot say okay to this, right? You are worth more. Just I pause. If there's an opportunity for me to take even an evening to think about it and discuss it with my husband again, because he will, help me get that confidence. I do. I say no to myself a lot. Like, no, you're worth more. Don't sell yourself short.
And Jodi, that's a really good point, I think, for us to dig a little bit deeper in, is this self-talk. Because we all have it across all genders. We have this self-talk, but obviously we're talking about women today, and listening to that. No, I can't do that, or maybe I need to do this for free, or maybe I need to be a little quiet. what would be your advice because you have someone that supports you with that self-talk? You talk about going home to your husband, and I have the same thing with my wife. So I have someone who helps me with that self-talk. What do you say to people who might not have someone at home with that self-talk? So when they go into the corporate world, they are the only one, or they feel like the only one, they feel alone, and that self-talk starts to just bubble to the top because of that.
Yeah, I do think you need your own personal board of directors, right? Whether it's your good friends, your colleagues, we all need those people that we can go to bounce things off of. I do think that, I believe in, mentorship. I believe, women mentoring women, but I also believe in men and women mentoring each other too, because if things are going to change, we need to have the help of men. And there are many. I've always listened to TED Talks that have given me confidence. When I'm speaking, I love, listening to Amy Cuddy's, the power pose, Brene Brown, the power of vulnerability, and also the art of asking is a great book because that gives you the confidence. I can't remember the author's name off the top of my head, but she goes through her journey of not asking at all to asking the question and having success when asking the question. And I have to say, with my business, I did that too. And the people who want to help you it's really amazing. People do want to help.
That's true. And taking that leap too, and using your resources, taking that leap and practicing, and even in moments of anxiety, just kind of going for it. Because after you do it, after a little bit, it's just innate for you to say, I'm going to put myself first and I'm going to be confident.
You're right, Kat. It's like those first couple times are hard.
Yeah.
Right? And then afterwards, it's like, I'm just going to do that.
Yeah.
Right. Or you call that friend that gives you like, you do this, go do it.
Yes. And then you do it for other people. Like I can say even for myself, once I kind of got past that and I got that confidence, be like, no, then it's just, then you get to the point where you're trying to, pump up other people. Like just do it. I know it feels weird, but just do it because it does reap benefits well beyond just trying to be, a yes girl.
Right. Because we all hate rejection, but if you go into asking a question, right?
Yeah.
And you know that the worst that can happen is no, then
right.
Okay,
Yeah. You come to terms with that the worst thing is you being where you left off.
Right.
But see, and that's funny because you when you look at it, you're like, okay, the no is going to be the worst thing in the world, but not asking a question is actually the worst thing in the world.
Yep.
Because you don't know whether it's going to be a yes or a no.
Right.
And not asking the question will leave you exactly where you are or actually help you regress. Before we go, Joyce, I want to put you on the spot.
Okay.
And my putting you on the spot is this. What are as we talk about equity, what are 2-3 things that corporations need to do? And then what are 2 or 3 things that individuals need to do?
I think, with the corporations, definitely, we see it at Kaleidoscope Group that how many corporations are really interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion and having their employees learn more. And it's now implementing it. So, I always say to the groups that we're facilitating, it's like, we have facilitated you. We have given you this information. Now it's your job to go out and spread it to others, right? So we need to continue this topic and conversation. I would say it starts from the C-suites down, that we need to continue having these conversations and asking some hard questions. And I've had some, a lot of men at the top ask questions that have been like, I'm embarrassed to ask that. It's like, like I said before, to women, ask those questions, right? Get yourself ahead. So for the men too, who are at the top, ask those questions. This is going to make your life easier. Right? The balance, we're going to have that greater balance. And then for individuals, I just keep moving forward, keep asking the questions, keep learning, keep reading, keep researching. Again, ask questions. People are willing to help. People want to help. So knowing, even if you can't help and answer that question, people will always, for the most part, say, I don't know the answer to that, but let me reach out to a friend of mine who may. Right. And I'll get back to you. So I think individuals need to, advocate for themselves. We need to keep fighting, pushing forward.
Wow. And this is coming from someone who doesn't like to fight. So,
I know. I don't really, honestly. My husband will say,
right, the irony.
Go for it to eat. I'm like, wherever you want. I don't care. I'm just hungry. I don't, I'm pretty even keel. Except when it comes to equality. I'm not.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Kat, any last word here?
I honestly, Jodi, I really want to have you back because I want to talk more about how this can impact the performance, the inequality in workplace, because you brought up some really good points, especially in the beginning about the doll, right? If we're starting off looking at that, then that becomes what our reality, and then how does that bleed into how we show up at work, what our desires are, what we think our roles should be. So really this conversation has been so deep, and I would love to expand it moving forward, because back to a point I made earlier, we don't want to perpetuate things. Correct? If we continue to perpetuate, we're not going to be able to elevate in workplaces or on the sports field, wherever. And that's really important.
So one thing that I'll leave you with, and that I have said, because I have written a book, and that is going, hopefully a publisher picks that up as well. But one thing that I have found is that as we get older, there are a lot of self-help classes for women. How do we fit in, right? How do we juggle it all? How do we do this? How do we do that? How do we fit into this man's world? My point is, women are not broken. We do not need to be fixed. It's our culture that is broken, and our culture that needs to be fixed, not us. So I think that we need to start at an early age. So then we don't have to tell, women, you need to take this self-help class. You need to do this. You need to be more aggressive. You need to be not that aggressive, things like that. So, yeah.
Well, I love it. I'm really glad that Kat says that we need to have you back, because we do. I really want to explore this whole thing of top down. You talked about how that's how we start the problem, and you just ended up saying that we actually need to start addressing the problem from bottom up. And I want to talk about how young boys fit into that bottom up equation, because I believe that just talking to young girls about this is actually not going to be beneficial. That we actually have to get our young boys into this conversation as early as possible. Yeah, 100%. Go ahead, huh?
100%. And I could have a good colleague of mine who I work at the White House with on the show as well. And she is an expert on bringing boys into the picture. Together, we are a very good team and very knowledgeable.
I have a 1-year-old son, so that really triggered me. I was like, that's true too. And it's important. It's something for me that's been really important with Oliver, is making sure that he sees that balance at the beginning. Because again, we don't want to perpetuate mindsets.
Wow. This is Becoming Inclusive. As you see, we are becoming. We're inviting you into the process, to our journey. And we hope that you got something from this particular conversation. And if you didn't, Jodi is coming back. Jodi is coming back. So if you were like, I was waiting for something else, don't worry. She'll be back. I'm Reggie Ponder. I am your co-host. That is Catherine Potts, your other co-host. And of course, we have Jodi Norgaard. Thank you so much, Jodi, for joining us. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for joining us. And a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Becoming Inclusive is presented by the Kaleidoscope Group, your full-service diversity, equity, and inclusion partner serving clients worldwide. Learn more and continue the conversation at kgdiversity.com.